In the early 1930s, China is already tearing itself apart. Warlords feud, peasants starve, and a brutal civil war pits the ruling nationalist government against a fragmented communist movement fighting not for victory, but for survival. By 1934, the balance has tipped decisively. Nationalist forces, better armed and numerically superior, have encircled the communists' main army in southern China. Supplies are gone, morale is collapsing, the revolution appears finished until a single, desperate decision is made that will change the fate of China forever. On the night of October 16, 1934, under a moonless sky, the Communist Red Army makes its move. Roughly 130,000 soldiers, party officials, medics, porters, and families break through a weak point in the nationalist blockade. It is not an escape so much as a hemorrhage. Within days, thousands are dead. Units are scattered, command breaks down. The retreat becomes a flight into the unknown. Across some of the most unforgiving terrain on Earth, mountains rise like walls. Rivers cut through the land like knives, and everywhere, enemy forces are waiting. What follows will later be called the Long March, but in the moment, there is nothing heroic about it. Hunger becomes constant, disease spreads unchecked. Men collapse mid-step and are left where they fall. Ammunition is scarce, shoes wear through, winter closes in. More soldiers die from exhaustion than from enemy fire. Entire divisions simply vanish. Each week, the column shrinks. Yet even as the army disintegrates physically, something else is happening quietly within its leadership, something far more consequential for China's future. And if you're drawn to stories where history turns on moments like this, subscribing and liking the video helps this kind of deep storytelling reach more people who crave it. At the heart of the chaos is a bitter political struggle. Mao Zedong, once a rising military voice, has been sidelined months earlier. His belief in guerrilla warfare avoiding decisive battles, melting into the countryside, has been rejected in favor of orthodox, conventional tactics copied from European armies. Those tactics have failed catastrophically. Encirclement is the result. As casualties mount and panic spreads, communist leaders face a terrifying reality: continue as they are, and the movement will be annihilated. So, deep in the mountains, amid starvation and retreat, they reverse course. Mao is restored to command, and with that decision, the revolution takes a sharp and irreversible turn. Mao acts immediately. He abandons the doomed strategy of holding territory and instead leads the army into rugged, sparsely populated regions where nationalist forces struggle to follow. Speed is sacrificed for survival. Battles are avoided whenever possible. The march remains lethal, but it becomes purposeful. River crossings are planned with precision. Ambushes replace frontal assaults. Slowly, the hemorrhaging slows. Survivors begin to believe not in victory, but in Mao, and yet, even as his influence grows, the army marches straight toward its most dangerous trial, one that will determine whether this retreat becomes legend or extinction. Months stretch into a year. The Red Army crosses thousands of miles, from subtropical lowlands to frozen highlands. Snowstorms kill as efficiently as bullets. When they finally reach northern China, the numbers tell a brutal truth. Of the original 130,000 who began the march, fewer than 8,000 remain. The rest are dead, missing, or scattered forever. It is a catastrophe by any military standard. But the communists are alive, the movement endures. And survival in revolutionary politics is everything. In the aftermath, the meaning of the Long March is rewritten. It is no longer a retreat, it is a test. Those who survived are elevated. Those who led them are sanctified, and Mao Zedong emerges transformed not merely as a commander who adapted, but as the man credited with saving the revolution itself. Loyalty to Mao becomes inseparable from loyalty to survival. What no one yet realizes is that this moment does more than preserve a movement, it forges a system of power that will shape China for generations to come. When the survivors of the Long March finally stop moving, they are no longer merely soldiers, they are witnesses. What they have endured, starvation, betrayal, near extinction, has stripped away doubt and hierarchy alike. In its place emerges something far more potent, a belief that survival itself proves legitimacy. And at the center of that belief stands Mao Zedong, now spoken of not just as a leader, but as the reason any of them are alive at all. From this point forward, power in the communist movement will not be earned through debate or elections, but through survival, memory, and control of the story. In the remote base areas of northern China, Mao consolidates his position with careful precision. He does not yet hold every formal title, but authority no longer depends on titles alone. The veterans of the Long March, those few thousand who remain, form a new inner circle. Their sheer trauma binds them together more tightly than ideology ever could. To challenge Mao now is to challenge the narrative of survival itself. And in revolutionary politics, that is a fatal mistake. It is during this period that the internal architecture of communist power hardens. At the top sits the Central Committee, theoretically representing the party as a whole. Within it is the Politburo, a smaller group tasked with decision-making. But above even that stands the true center of gravity, the Politburo Standing Committee, a handful of men whose consensus becomes law. Mao understands something crucial earlier than anyone else. Control this body, and you control the party, the army, and the future state that has yet to be born. As the Japanese invasion intensifies in the late 1930s, the communists gain breathing room. Nationalist forces are forced to redirect their attention outward. Mao uses the war not just to fight an enemy, but to refine authority. Internal campaigns are launched to enforce ideological discipline. Dissent is labeled disloyalty. History is edited in real time. Competing interpretations of the revolution quietly disappear, and beneath the surface of unity, a question begins to form: if survival grants authority, what happens when someone claims Mao survived because of them? By 1943, Mao's dominance is no longer informal. He is officially elevated as the paramount leader of the Chinese Communist Party. His writings are elevated from theory to truth. Criticism sessions enforce conformity. Loyalty is measured not by competence, but by devotion. This is not merely political leadership, it is the beginning of ideological centralization, where one man's interpretation becomes the standard by which all others are judged. The transformation reaches its climax in 1945 at the 7th National Congress of the Communist Party. Here, history itself is rewritten. The party formally enshrines Mao Zedong thought as its guiding ideology. Mao is declared the indispensable architect of revolutionary victory past, present, and future. The Long March is elevated into a sacred epic, and Mao stands at its center unchallenged. Those who walked beside him are rewarded with power. Those who question him are erased from memory. Yet even as Mao's authority is sealed, the machinery he has built is preparing to outgrow the war that created it. For years later, in 1949, the Communists emerge victorious in the Civil War. Mao stands atop Tiananmen Gate and proclaims the birth of the People's Republic of China. To the outside world, it appears as the triumphant conclusion of decades of struggle. To those inside the party, it is something else entirely, the transition from revolution to rule. And history offers a warning: winning power is far easier than governing with it. The revolutionary system that sustained Mao through survival is now tasked with running a nation of hundreds of millions. Decisions that once affected guerrilla units will now shape entire provinces. Loyalty that once kept the movement alive will now determine who controls food, industry, and life itself. The question facing China is no longer whether Mao can win, but whether a system forged in crisis can function in peace. The answer, still unseen, is already forming. Victory brings silence to the battlefield, but not to the machinery of power. When the People's Republic of China is born in 1949, the Communist Party inherits a country exhausted by decades of war. Cities lie in ruins, infrastructure is shattered. Millions are displaced, and yet, beneath the promise of renewal, the revolutionary system forged during survival does not soften, it calcifies. The structures built to win a war are now tasked with ruling a civilization, and they carry with them one dangerous assumption that absolute authority, once justified by survival, must never be surrendered. To govern the new state, the party constructs a parallel system. There is the visible government ministries, councils, planning commissions responsible for day-to-day administration. And above it sits the party itself, issuing directives that override law, expertise, and debate. At the center of this arrangement is the State Council, nominally the highest executive authority, led by a premier. In theory, this is balance. In practice, it is hierarchy. Every major figure within the state also belongs to the Politburo Standing Committee, and above all of them stands Mao. This dual structure ensures that nothing escapes party control. But it also ensures something else. Personal loyalty becomes the primary qualification for power. Men like Zhou Enlai, brilliant, disciplined, and utterly devoted, are elevated not just because of skill, but because they are trusted. Others, equally capable but politically suspect, are sidelined. Over time, administration becomes less about competence and more about alignment. Policies are approved not because they work, but because they reflect Mao's will. The consequences are profound. Ambitious campaigns are launched to remake society at breakneck speed. Agriculture is reorganized. Industry is collectivized. Targets are set with revolutionary optimism and enforced with revolutionary discipline. When local officials report failure, they are punished. When they report success, they are rewarded even if those reports are false. Slowly, reality bends under pressure from ideology. And as the distance between truth and power grows, the system begins to consume itself from within. Yet Mao remains untouchable. The very men who might challenge him are bound by history. They marched with him. They survived because of him. Their authority flows from his narrative. To question Mao is to question the Long March, the revolution, and their own legitimacy. A political aristocracy emerges. Long March veterans who now occupy the highest offices of state. Their families live within guarded compounds. Their children attend elite schools. Informally, they become known as princelings, heirs to revolutionary sacrifice. Among them is Xi Jinping, a veteran revolutionary and once a trusted ally of Mao. During the Long March's final stages, she helped shelter Mao and his exhausted forces in northern China, an act that likely saved the movement itself. Xi Jinping rises through the ranks, holding senior positions in the new government. His family enjoys status, protection, and access. His son, Xi Jinping, grows up surrounded by power, absorbing its language and rituals from birth. But systems built on loyalty are brittle, and when they fracture, they do so violently. By the late 1950s, catastrophic policy failures can no longer be hidden. Agricultural experiments collapse. Famine spreads across the countryside. Millions die, largely unseen by the leadership insulated above them. Within the party, concern turns to fear. Some leaders quietly attempt to rein in Mao's authority. They propose moderation, they suggest limits. For the first time since the Long March, Mao senses constraint. His response is not reform but preparation. If this story grips you, hitting like and subscribing genuinely helps more people discover long-form, serious history like this, stories that explain not just what happened, but why it still matters today. Because Mao has learned something fundamental. A system that allows limits will eventually impose them. And so he begins to plan a final act, one that will erase opposition, reassert ideological purity, and remind the nation where power truly resides. It will not target enemies alone. It will target memory, hierarchy, and even the children of the revolution itself. And when it comes, no rank, no history, and no family name will offer protection. By the mid-1960s, Mao Zedong is no longer simply leading China, he is guarding his legacy. The catastrophic failures of earlier campaigns have shaken confidence inside the Communist Party, even if no one dares say so publicly. Quietly, other leaders begin to manage the state more pragmatically, easing Mao's direct grip on daily governance. To Mao, this is not course correction, it is betrayal. And so, convinced that the revolution itself is being stolen from him, he prepares to unleash a storm that will tear the system apart from the inside. In 1966, Mao launches the Cultural Revolution. Its stated goal is ideological purity, to cleanse China of bourgeois thought and restore revolutionary fervor. Its real purpose is far simpler and far more dangerous. It is a mass mobilization designed to bypass party structures entirely and return absolute authority to Mao alone. Millions of young people are called upon to rise up as Red Guards, armed not with laws or experience, but with Mao's words. What follows is chaos by design. Schools close, families turn on one another. Public denunciations become spectacles of humiliation. Teachers, intellectuals, artists, and officials are dragged into the streets, beaten, imprisoned, or killed. Revolutionary credentials offer no protection. In fact, they make one a more tempting target. Long March veterans once untouchable are accused of betrayal, revisionism, insufficient devotion. The system that rewarded loyalty now demands sacrifice, and it will not stop until fear replaces memory. At the highest levels, the purge is relentless. Senior leaders fall one by one, some disappear into labor camps. Others die under interrogation. Mao's own chosen successor attempts to flee the country after being accused of treason. His plane crashes and he is erased from official history. The message is unmistakable. No one stands above Mao, not even those he once trusted most. The Standing Committee, once the core of collective leadership, becomes hollowed out by terror. Among those destroyed is Xi Jinping, once a revolutionary hero and senior official. He is publicly humiliated by Red Guards and branded an enemy of the people. He is imprisoned for 8 years, cut off from power, stripped of dignity. His family is scattered. And his teenage son, Xi Jinping, raised inside privileges, expelled from his elite school in Beijing and sent into internal exile, forced to live in rural poverty. The revolution has come for its own children and it shows no mercy. For young Xi Jinping, the lesson is brutal and unforgettable. Status is temporary, ideology offers no protection. Power alone decides who survives. He watches as his father, once celebrated, is erased overnight. He learns to endure, to remain silent, to observe how authority is exercised and how quickly it can turn. Where others are broken by the experience, he internalizes it. The system that destroys his family also teaches him its rules. Mao remains in control until his death in 1976. By then, China is traumatized, exhausted, and deeply scarred. Yet Mao has succeeded in one final objective. He has ensured that power in China is personal, centralized, and unchecked, dangerous to hold, and even more dangerous to lose. The political architecture he leaves behind is not an accident. It is the product of survival, fear, and absolute authority refined over decades. By the time Mao dies, the cycle is complete. The revolution that promised liberation has produced a system where memory is weaponized and control is everything. Decades later, another man shaped by humiliation, hardened by loss, and determined never to be powerless again will rise through this same structure. He will not dismantle it, he will perfect it.